computer. Okay, good morning. Hello, excellent. So everyone can hear me, everyone can see me. Fantastic. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today. Oops, that was a bit over enthusiastic. Today's talk is all about what's ahead for 2023. I'm so excited to jump in with this. I have been working on this talk for the last week, 10 days. Thank you so much to everyone who's joining me this close to Christmas. I do appreciate that it is the 21st of December today. She says yes, 21st, yes. So we're nearly at Christmas. And for those of you who are watching on replay, then do enjoy it. Hopefully you're watching it with the box of roses or just chilling out. And hopefully those of you watching today are on somewhat of a Christmas wind down. So thank you for being here. We are going to be talking about what's ahead for 2023. Just a tiny little bit of housekeeping. I am going to be talking to you, she says, looking for her clock for timekeeping purposes. Really on it today, as you can tell. Oh, here it is. Perfect. I'm going to be talking to you for about 45 minutes and then taking questions at the end. This is my housekeeping slide. If you have got questions as we go through the talk, please feel free to put it into the Q&A. So as we're in a webinar format, you'll see that we've got a Q&A section and a chat. So the chat, please do use for chat. I always love it when I do these talks and I see people having a conversation between themselves, maybe swapping Instagram handles or websites. And then we've also got a Q&A section, which is just really much easier for me to find if at the end it's just me in here today. So I'm fielding both the talk and the questions. So if you have got anything that you want to ask and you pop it into the Q&A, it means I'm much more likely to find it at the end rather than having to scroll back through the chat. So do come in, feel free, introduce yourself, tell us what your business is, tell us how 2022 has been for you and how you're feeling about 2023. Also, if you are watching and you want to share on Instagram, I always love to see where people are watching. You can tag me at Resilient Retail Club. And if you're watching on the replay, tag me on the replay too. I'd love to see where you're at. So a little tiny bit about me, in case you don't know who I am. My name's Catherine Eardley. This is my 22nd year in the retail industry. I've worked 17 years in big high street names and the last 5 years with independent retailers, startups and brands. I am very proud to be a Forbes contributor, Forbes.com contributor on the subject of starting and scaling a product business. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is as a direct result of the work that I do for Forbes. I do a trend article every year. It's usually my most read article. In fact, last year, I think my 2 trend articles combined between industry trends and product trends had over 50,000 views, which was amazing. So what it means is, in terms of like a little bit about kind of methodology, if you like, in terms of how I came up with today's talk, is that as I am a Forbes contributor, I do get sent a lot of research, which is brilliant. So I've gone through research from people like Global Data, Boston Consulting Group. I reached out to them for expert commentary on the retail industry. I've also gone through Anchor Store, gave a trend webinar about the future of independent retail. British Independent Retail Association have commented, eBay, Shopify, Data, Etsy, Pinterest, as well as other industry experts. So that's what I've done today. I've gone through basically all of the information that I've been sent about experts' view on where the industry is going, and I've kind of distilled it as best I can. There is a lot of information, but I've tried to distill it as best I can into something that is super practical for small businesses. And is really focused on what's happening, and more importantly, I think, than what's happening is what does that mean for your business. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about touch a little bit on 2022 just to set the scene. We're going to talk about the industry trends ahead, and we're going to also be talking about the product trends. So when I talk about product trends, I have a good friend, Jo, who runs Creative Flow Collective, and she is a product trend expert in terms of she makes beautiful Pinterest boards about themes and that kind of thing. My product trend piece is much more about sort of consumer purchasing trends, so it's not nearly as aesthetic, I have to say. But we are going to be talking about not just kind of shifts in the industry, but also about what we think people are going to be buying in 2023. Okay, so without further ado, jumping into what's been happening, So the first thing that I really just want to acknowledge is that the 2022 has been a particularly difficult year. It's funny, the people that I reached out to for comments, one of the things I asked them was, you know, do you think that 2022 has been tougher than 2020 and 2021? And pretty much resolutely, uniformly, they all said yes. So here's one of the things that I just wanted to touch on. I'll come back to this one here. This is an interesting one for anybody who's predominantly online. This is the internet sales as a percentage of total retail sales. And this is showing you that this is the pandemic. You can see that they've been going up gradually from 1995, shot up during the pandemic. But then interestingly, you can see that one of the things that's been impacting the small product businesses, in particular in this year, has been the fact that month on month, the percentage, so this is for every pound that is spent in UK retail, how many pence is spent in e-commerce, and you can see that that amount, that percentage has been declining month on month. It did jump up in the month of November. This is pretty common. You can see every year there's a spike, virtually every year you can see there's a spike at the end of the year for the Christmas shopping. That does tend to have a higher penetration, but basically you can see that month on month you've seen it declining. We're going to talk about this more later, as was one of my trends, but I just wanted to share this to you because if you do sell predominantly online and it's felt tricky, then this I think goes some way towards explaining that. Okay, this comes from the FT. This is the Consumer Confidence Index. It's quite, I love to use these graphs because I think sometimes it just gives this real clarity to what's happening in a way that numbers on a page can't do. So this is really, the consumer confidence is an exercise that every month they ask a cross-section of consumers how positive they're feeling about the economy improving in the next 12 months. And when it's negative, it means that the consumers are not feeling confident. And when it's positive, then they are. So you can see, this is interesting, this goes all the way back from 1974. So it's showing you that we're on pretty much historic lows in 2022. It has slightly improved towards the end of the year, and there is a forecast that it will improve into 2023. But still, what we're looking at is a prolonged period of time where the consumer really is not feeling confident. And when the consumer's not feeling confident, then that has a knock-on impact on the way that they purchase. It particularly has an impact on the way that they purchase larger items, so beds, furniture, cars, things like that. And so, for example, this year we had Made.com going into administration, and I mean, there were various different elements to that story, but one of the things for sure was this consumer confidence, which does have a knock-on impact. The only thing I will say as well is that when we come to talk about 2023, and I've spoken about this before, because we are technically in a recession, we will be in a recession in 2023, but some of the factors impacting us in 2023, we've already been dealing with in 2022, so it's not a new set of factors necessarily. And you can see that on this consumer confidence, that we're actually slightly better now than we were at the sort of midpoint of 2022. Okay, so inflation hit 10.7% in November 2022, again, slightly down from its peak in October. But you can see the inflation is a major impact that again has been hitting us all the way through 2022, so it will continue to be an issue in 2023, but it's not a new factor. Andrew Goodacre, who runs the British Independent Retailers Association, noted that independent retailers have had to deal with plus 400% energy costs in 2022, and wages costing 10% more, plus supply chain inflation. So again, it has been particularly challenging for maintaining profit margins. 2023 then, the outlook, not to go into super great detail, but just to say that various different reports that I've read, Pitch, and probably what you've seen as well on the news, was talking about a shallow but protracted recession. So that was from a KPMG report. The inflation is set to drop back slightly, so I think it'll be around 5% by the end of next year, and then dropping back to the Bank of England's target by the beginning of 2024. There will be interest rate increases. It looks like the Bank of England interest rates are set to be higher again in 2023. And there is no doubt that discretionary household income will be hit. We've already seen an impact on discretionary spending, particularly on non-essentials and households, and that is likely to continue into 2023 for sure. So all of this is just to say, sometimes when I do these talks, I'm like, oh, I'm not really starting with the high points here, but I'm a big believer in being realistic. I'm a big believer in being really clear about what's happening. But then what I want to really talk about and what I'd love you to take away is where the opportunities lie, and going on to what is ahead for 2023 for product business in specific. So I'm going to touch on 4 trends. Said there's a lot of information that I've sifted through to distill these. I will try and keep these as succinct as possible. Some of these feel like really big things to talk about, but I'll try and keep it as focused as possible and also always bring it back to what it means for your business. So the 4 trends in terms of impacting for consumer trends, industry trends, call them what you like. We're talking about value for money mindset, what I've called circular everything, a move towards fans, not consumers, and also the evolution of e-commerce, which we've kind of already touched on a little bit with the graph that I showed you. So the first thing then I want to talk about is the value for money mindset. So everything that I've read, and probably what you're seeing as well when you're talking to your customers, is this idea around people they're looking at their discretionary spending. And so they are thinking hard about what they want to purchase. I saw a great term, which is skimpflation. Skimpflation is where people kind of trade down from what they might normally buy. It's interesting actually, because skimpflation is one thing where people trade down, but this move towards value for money mindset is actually not always necessarily about spending less per se or lower outlay. But it's about this shift to really thinking about the cost per use or the cost per 100 mils, that kind of thing. So actually, even one of the reports that I was reading about consumer spending suggested that more people might even be looking for larger size packs, for example, because that represents better value for money. So it's not always about spending less money. It is really about demonstrating the value for money for your offers. There's a few different things here then to kind of unpick with this value for money mindset. And one of the questions that I asked, which I was really interested in finding out from the experts that I was talking to about in terms of, well, what does this mean for businesses, is I asked a lot of them, how do businesses balance the need for protecting their profit margins as well as working with a customer that has value for money at its forefront? Because we can't just all go in there and start competing on price, because that is a race to the bottom. It is just going to absolutely hammer people's profit margins. And most small businesses, even if you tried to compete on price, you would never really be able to compete with people who are making things at mass production level. And I was also curious, I asked a lot of people how they felt about, is the consumer just after the cheapest option? Are we talking about a consumer is absolutely bare bones, or what's the kind of nuance there with this value for money? And a few things came out of this, and this is what I want to kind of give you as a takeaway for your own business. Communication style definitely has to shift. If you aren't already talking about your products and how they offer value for money, then I suggest that you make that a real pillar of your communication and how you talk to your customers in 2023. They have to understand, again, as I said, value for money does not necessarily mean the cheapest. So Andrew Goodacre, again, from British Independent Retail Association, or BIRA, says that value is a combination of price, quality, and service. Yes, you may have to occasionally have offers, but really the product is key. And I think that's a great way of putting it. I often talk about value, the value triangle, which is about your price, your quality, and the desirability of your products as well. So all of these things are really going to come into play. But again, it's thinking about how do you communicate to your customer about the value of your products? How do you convince them that it does offer good value? So do you need to talk about cost per use? Do you need to talk about even if it's like a larger size, that you get that's a better deal than buying something that's a smaller size? That said, I do think there's room for a range of price points. Now, if you have a very limited range and just bringing in another range at a lower price point is just simply not workable, then I would take this with a pinch of salt. But a lot of people, especially who have larger product ranges, are thinking about having that sort of option in the range for the more cost-conscious consumer. So while not everybody will be looking at the amount that they're spending, there will still definitely be a customer, and more of a customer, that has a certain amount to spend, and that's what they want to spend. So it's getting a combination between having an offer which is better value, maybe if you buy more you get better value, but equally having a range of price points where you've got that kind of entry level as well. And if you're somebody who really doesn't have that entry level price point that allows someone to buy into your brand without spending a huge amount of money, then it may be something you could think about introducing in 2023. The other thing to really stress with this is that, yes, the consumer is worried about value for money. However, again, something that came up time and time again in a lot of the research that I was reading was that the consumer, sometimes the value for money mindset is about, I'm looking for a deal, I'm looking for something that fits in my budget. But often it's to do with what they call thoughtful and considered indulgence. So they will still buy. And I think personally, they will still gift. So they will still be gifting for loved ones. They will still be wanting to buy something special, but it's going to be very thoughtful and it's going to be very considered. So again, it's not necessarily that your messaging, in fact, probably for most of you watching today, it's not going to be that your messaging is all about, how can I get this the cheapest it can be? And my prices are, like £1 for everything type, bargain pricing. That's not really the messaging we're talking about. What we're talking about is really explaining to your customer the value of what they're purchasing with you. Understanding that spending is not coming easy for a lot of people. So when they do spend with you, that you're really articulating to them exactly the value of it. And also ultimately, as the Boston Consulting Group put it, said, more focus on exactly what your customer wants. I still believe that the right product that your customer really wants in the right place at the right time will result in sales, regardless of the economic situation. So it's really putting that onus back on you to think about, they're going to buy, but they're cautious. They don't have as much discretionary spending. So when they do buy, it's going to be really special, really worth it. So that is tying into what your customer wants and really articulating the value of it. Does that make sense? As I said, a lot of these are super big topics, so I'm trying to distill it as much as possible without trying to oversimplify. And we have talked, it's interesting, whenever I do trend work and I update it, it's always themes that recur all the way through the year, but it's just like a slightly different twist on it or a slightly different emphasis. And I think that last year, when I was looking back at the trend information that I was doing then, I was talking about this idea about value, but I just think it's ratcheted up a notch in terms of urgency when it comes to more people who are having a bigger impact on things like their mortgage payments, their energy payments. So yes, it's been bubbling along, but this is just really the year to focus on it. Okay, so circular everything is what I called this. This is just really a note on the fact that sustainability, when I was looking at a lot of the trend information, sustainability didn't crop up quite as much as it has in previous years. And I asked some of the people who'd produced the research about this. And they said it's almost because sustainability has become second nature to so many consumers that it's just like a kind of like a standard thing. But what really is taking off, and I think will just continue to really ramp up, is this idea of the circular economy, the idea of particularly of resale or secondhand. So eBay is a really great example of this. eBay, I'm sure lots of you will have seen, they were sponsored Love Island this year. So all of the fashion was secondhand. And it was really a major moment because prior to that, it had always been fast fashion brands. So eBay's research suggested that they sold one secondhand fashion item a second in 2022. 9 out of 10 UK adults that they surveyed, they did a major survey of UK consumers, and 9 out of 10 of them had bought something secondhand. And really what I think the key thing about the circular economy, so circular economy is basically anything to do with reuse, repair, all recycle. So in terms of, rather than a linear economy where something is produced, used, and then discarded, circular is about it becoming sort of more circular. So I'm probably explaining this concept to a lot of you who are very familiar with it. So that has been going on for a while, but I think resale within this, and secondhand purchasing in particular, is already booming. And I just think it is this real sweet spot between both being sustainable, environmentally friendly, and it's about value for money. So it's a double tick at a time when a lot of people are looking for ways to be more sustainable and to save money. So the eBay research was showing that 32% bought secondhand to cut because they were cutting back on their spending, 31% because of the cost of living crisis, and 26% because they wanted to be more sustainable. As I said, sustainability is really about that second nature now. So Shopify, in their research of over 900 merchants and what they were selling last year, showed that 40% of consumers would spend more on a climate conscious item, and 63% were more likely to share about it if they knew it was less harmful than an alternative to the environment. So yes, exactly. Lauren's reusable period pads. This is exactly it. This is the, people are really very open and they're very listening. Oh my goodness. That was like the worst grammar I think I've used all year. They are really listening to this message about circularity, resale, all of these things, repairing. It's just, if there's one thing that really just meets all of the trends at the moment, it is this idea of using, really like keeping things going for longer, because as I said, it ticks two major boxes: the sustainability element, which is still more than ever becoming second nature for consumers, but then also the cost of living crisis and savings. So what does it mean for you? Well, it may not be possible to incorporate secondhand into your business, but it's definitely worth thinking about it. If you are in need, for example, of having a lower priced offering, is this something that you could look at? Repairs, that's something else that's come up a lot in terms of not just things like mending is extremely on trend at the moment. We had somebody in the Resilient Retail Club who had something like 3.2 million views of her reels about visible mending. But I think also what you have to really consider is that the customer is more open to hearing about longevity. They're more open to hearing about how your products last longer, are better quality, and they're also more open to hearing about things like refills. So if you are a candle brand, for example, who will refill the container if someone sends it back to you, like make sure you're shouting about it and just thinking about what could you incorporate. Is it anything that you can incorporate? It may be or it may not be. But could you partner with other people, for example, that, if there are the repair shops that you could even talk about, could you write blog posts about how you can repair things or how you can extend the life of your products? Just know that if there's even a kind of possibility for you to incorporate this, or if indeed your business already sits in this sphere, you need to be shouting about it. You absolutely 100% need to be shouting about it, because this is, a huge movement in consumer behavior. The stigmatism of buying secondhand has completely gone. It's very much seen as on trend, and everything is about the circularity because it just ticks so many boxes. So again, think about what this means for your business. And also sustainability is still key. If you're like, well, I'm zero waste, I'm not necessarily so much circular, but I am zero waste, just know that this is really important. This also has to be a big part of your messaging. And again, another thing that I asked a lot of people was, do you think, because there's this kind of notion of, I know certainly back in 2012 when I was working for an ethical kids brand and ethical kid clothing and skincare brand, we had this idea that when times were tough, people tended to like chuck their values out of the window and just go for what the cheapest option was. And there's been a lot of discussion about, is this going to be a similar situation, that sustainability is suddenly going to take a back seat because of the cost of living crisis? But so far, everyone that I've spoken to feels this is not the case. This is the customer wants to save money, but they also want to be sustainable. I mean, of course, that's where secondhand really plays into this. But just be aware that sustainability is not going away. It's still really important to consumer. It still should be a pillar of what you talk about. But just think about the ways that you can incorporate any other types of elements of circularity, and also the cost savings associated with that. Okay, so this topic, fans not consumers, this one feels to me like a massive topic, so I'm going to try and keep it as I've got literally reams of notes on this, but I'm going to try and keep this as succinct and focused as possible. So this is my third trend, fans not consumers. Okay, so what this really boils down to try and summarize it in as succinct way as possible, is that the key going forward is about personal and direct relationships with your customers, as opposed to kind of like broadcast style advertising. So as I said, the Shopify Commerce Report, which is free, you can go look it up and download it. It's very long, but it's very interesting. They talk about, as I said, they surveyed over 900 brands. One of the things that they noted to start off with is the impact of privacy changes. So cookies have already been phased out by Apple and Mozilla, who run Firefox. They will also be gone from Google in 2024. So third-party data is becoming way less reliable, and as a result, ad spend has become much more problematic. Ads have got more expensive across every category, across every platform, and the return on ad spend, or the ROAS, has declined pretty much consistently across 2022. So if you're somebody who's previously run ads and found them difficult this year, you're not alone. So what really, so part of that then is about the shift to this, so acquisition. So ad strategy is basically an acquisition strategy, getting more people to come to your business. A lot of businesses last year talked about how they were shifting to a retention strategy. So it's all about loyalty, which is fair enough. That's great. And I always talk about loyalty, and I definitely think that we all should be thinking very carefully about what our strategy is for our VIP customers in 2023. But then the question really kind of becomes like, right, so what replaces this? If ads was an acquisition strategy, so what is the best acquisition strategy now? And sort of hand in hand with this decline in the ads, simultaneously there's a rise of what we call the creator economy. So creator economy is effectively, the YouTuber that creates like a hoodie or like my daughter, I don't know if anyone with kids has who watch Mariah Elizabeth on YouTube. So she's a creator, and she sells all kinds of stuff through her Spring stores. So it used to be called Teespring. I spoke to their CEO earlier this year, which was fascinating. It's one, I can't remember the podcast episode number, I'm afraid, but it's a really good one. It's really interesting what he had to say. The creator economy was $104 billion worldwide in 2022 and shows no signs of slowing down. So basically what this is this kind of shift towards away from brands, legacy brands, which were kind of, the model is you show up, you sort of do your broadcast marketing, and then you sell things, to creators where they're building relationships with their audiences, and then their audiences are buying from them. So it's kind of more the relationship between a creator and a fan than it is between a brand and a customer. So for me, it kind of almost says like trust is a major commodity now. So one of the issues I think with ads, even before the whole point about third-party targeting, things like that, was that especially younger generations, Gen Z in particular, just didn't really have so much trust in ads. So if you see an ad from a company, you're a bit like, okay, not sure about that. What they do have trust in is if they're watching a creator talking about a product that they love. If I say, oh my goodness, I've got my Yeti cup and I'm using it for my hot water and I love it, and there's a little link below that says, buy a Yeti cup, people are much more likely to purchase that way because they're seeing it as like a recommendation from a friend. And I think that the next shift in terms of of acquisition is going to be all about this idea of working with people who have access to being able to promote your products in return for a small fee. So effectively, what we're talking about is decentralizing your spend. So instead of you giving lots of money to an ad platform, you've got a network of people who are effectively promoting them. So an example of this is something like TikTok Shop. I don't know if anyone here already sells on TikTok Shop, but if you're on TikTok Shop, then creators can just go and you can basically say, look, people can promote my products, and then someone can go and promote your products and they earn commission. So I did a piece on TikTok Shop for Forbes this year. I interviewed a creator called Nisrin Kachar. So she was doing a live and she would get £10,000 of sales during a live stream, but it was all for other people's products. But that was fine for her because she was just getting commission on it. But it was, for her, she built up that trust with her audience. It was very important to her that she only promoted things that she knew her audience would like. So it's affiliates, which is very old technology and a very old sort of way of doing it. But I think what's slightly different is that there's a lot more movement to make it easier for this sort of thing to happen. So Shopify just launched Shopify Collabs, which is really all about it's basically sort of an affiliate platform. So again, it's about the shift for me is about, instead of this broadcast, it's then this network of people who are promoting your products based on genuine affinity. They're not just promoting it for the sake of it, but they're also being rewarded. So it may be that they're getting a cut. And so I think we'll see, and how easily replicable it'll be for small businesses, we'll have to see. But I think we'll see certainly bigger businesses with bigger budgets, they're going to be shifting that budget from spending it on ads into this kind of nurturing this network of affiliates. And interestingly enough, I also thought this was really funny, because I've been banging on about this for apps for years, literally, is that the Shopify Commerce, when they talked about their marketing trends, they said the next big trend in marketing is going to be collaborations. So that is organic collaborations, either between creators and brands or between different brands, which is I've been pushing for years as a great way to grow. So what I'm trying to really say, I think, with this sort of trend is that it's about trust, it's about authenticity, it's about organic growth from people who really do believe in your product. Lots of the technology is kind of racing to catch up in terms of making it super easy for other people to promote your products. But if I were you, I would be thinking, especially if I was somebody who'd been heavily reliant on ads, I would be thinking really carefully about how you start creating a network, or start thinking about it's like these authentic relationships and a network of people promoting you. So there's a few different bits. As I said, this is like a big topic. I feel like it could be pretty much its own talk, but think about your loyalty. So it's still about looking after your best customers, really making sure that if you've got a loyalty scheme, is it fit for purpose? Does it fit with what they want? Are you engaging with them on it? Don't forget about creating super fans, because even better than influencer content is user-generated content. So user-generated content is like the highest trust level of all. And I think also as well, going back to the influence piece, that's why sort of the idea of micro influencers has grown as well, because once an influencer gets to a certain point where they're just constantly promoting, I think their audience has less of a sort of organic relationship with them as when they're still small and very much a passion project, but they're still but they may be still from time to time promoting different things. So thinking about your network of super fans already, so what can you do to encourage user generated content, because that's really important. Let's build your hype network. So this may look like different ways, different things for different people, but just start really considering this idea about, instead of giving, if you were to not give your money to the platforms, but instead use it to try and get people to interact with your products and promote them, and give them a cut in exchange, what would that look like? And the final point I just wanted to make on this topic was also third-party data getting harder and harder. So that's all the cookies and changes to privacy settings, things like that. But the onus is on all of us collecting our own first-party data. So that's things like effectively getting your customers' email addresses. And I think For me personally, if anything, we've learned anything in 2022 rather, think about Twitter. You know, lots of us are not on Twitter necessarily. It's not a platform that is heavily used by product businesses. Some people are, but not everybody. Look at what happened to Twitter, or is happening to Twitter. If that happened to Instagram, what would happen to our communities? So we should all be thinking about, it should be a good reminder that if you're predominantly on Instagram, that you are building your business on somebody else's platform, and the onus has to be on collecting this first party data, because it also makes everything else much easier. You can identify your loyal customers once you know their email addresses. Once you can really target them with very specific ads, very specific offers once you've got that data. So I would say focus on your fans. Think about, so I think this is a developing change, and I think we'll see more technology come out, more solutions about how to make this easier for small businesses. But think about sort of getting creators, influencers to promote for you instead of paying for ads. That's something you've been doing. And then also be really, really conscious about gathering your first party data to avoid a situation where, let's say, your Instagram account gets locked out, or Instagram gets bought out by, you know, an interesting personality. All of those things are really important for you to be building in the back end your email list for sure. Okay, there you go. So it was a big topic. The next thing I just want, the final sort of industry trend is I just wanted to talk a little bit about e-commerce. How do you use Twitter for marketing products? Yeah, I don't think a lot of product businesses do, to be honest. I don't think a lot of them do. But what for me Twitter has shown us this year is that Twitter is a cautionary tale that probably hasn't impacted a lot of product businesses, but it's a cautionary tale, because imagine if that had been a platform that a lot of product businesses do use, then it could have been absolutely devastating. So it's just a reminder to us all to gather our own first party data. Email addresses, in other words. The final point that I wanted to make was about e-commerce. So e-commerce has been shifting, as we saw. There was a move to, there has been a decline month on month of the percentage. It has popped up again for Christmas, but I think going into next year, it will continue to normalize. I mean, effectively, if you look back to the graph, I should have popped the graph in here again as well. That was my bad. But you can see that we're probably now in line with where we would have been without the pandemic, whereas for a long time we were tracking ahead of it. A lot of people thought this was going to continue to, you know, pandemic behaviours were going to continue, but I think we've seen it slightly decline as people have got more comfortable going back to physical stores. So it is not by any stretch of the imagination the end of e-commerce or anything like that, but I think it's a good reminder that sort of traditional static e-commerce has also declined, because you can't necessarily see it in this graph, but social commerce, for example, which is effectively buying through social networks, that has growing 3 times as fast as traditional e-commerce. So that decline that we're seeing, probably if you looked at that split between social commerce and traditional e-commerce, would look even more dramatic on traditional e-commerce. So what does that mean for your business? So personally, I think that if you predominantly sell mostly through e-commerce, I would be looking to diversify your income streams. I would be looking at wholesale if that's an option for your business where you're selling into stores. I would also be looking at pop-up shops / events / ways of getting in front of your consumer directly and making that sort of an important pillar as part of your strategy for 2023, as opposed to just being simply online, because I think that's tougher. I think that I would also think about your social selling. So do you have Instagram? Do you have shoppable Instagram? Do you are you on, if you're on TikTok, do you have TikTok shop set up, things like that? Making it really super easy to buy, for people to buy from you through social media. And then I also would still, I know live selling is something that I've talked about for a while, and I know a lot of people are super skeptical about it. But I do think live selling and the more interactive elements are going to continue. And I think that that's important to remember that. Going back to the whole idea about the sort of creators, you know, social selling and commerce are really, the lines between entertainment and commerce continue to blur. So people do still quite like to watch a live stream and look at purchasing. It is, as I said, a trend that continues. The conversion rates from a live stream are 10 times that of traditional e-commerce. I spoke to Samaya Saidi, who sells on TikTok, who has generated £50,000 of revenue in 2 hours. And she is a modest fashion brand, and that was UK only sales. So it's quite staggering, some of the potential of live shopping. Now, of course, that's one example. Not everyone's going to have the same results, but I think it's just, again, just to really put that in your head, that the days of kind of creating a website, putting some products on it, and that being, enough is, I think, people are still buying through websites, but I think that it's just really acknowledging that e-commerce is continuing to evolve. And I think personally, I would be looking at diversifying income streams as well as looking at the more interactive elements as well. Okay, right. Product trends. So just quickly to run through these, what I wanted to touch on is just some of the product areas that keep cropping up. These will be relevant to some of you and not to others, but just to know that based on information from, as I said, from Etsy, from Pinterest, from Shopify as well, from their product data. A few of the things that have cropped up across the different areas, as well as other consumer trends information. So mental and physical well-being, this has been something that's been trending for a long time, but for example, the #1 item on Shopify in 2022 was Gymshark leggings. Beauty and skincare falls under this category as well, and things like clean skincare are really important too. Also, so under mental and physical well-being falls things like making healthier choices. So veganism, meat-free continues to be a really big push, and a lot of people are focusing on it. The second one I put saving but make it fun. So this one just recognises that, again, people are really conscious of their spending, but they're still looking for, so the quote from the Pinterest country manager for the UK says that despite tightening of purse strings, people are still looking for fresh tips, ideas and products. So if you are going to be talking, if you do have items that are budget friendly, again, just making, it doesn't have to feel onerous or depressing. It can be fun ideas. There's this whole thing called the Ka-Ching challenge and lots of gamification of savings. That was one of Pinterest's biggest trends, that people are really looking to be economical but have fun with it. But also things like, DIY everything. This is another product trend that I saw. So a big item that was very popular on Shopify was the Always pan, which was all about kind of cooking at home as a cheaper alternative to eating out. So I really think about how you can pitch it as a good value opportunity. Considered luxury, I feel like we've talked about this already, but this is really the idea that people do want to buy something nice. It's not all of doom and gloom in terms of people only want to buy the absolute basics. They do want to buy nice things and they want to treat their loved ones. There's lots of evidence as well that suggests that some of the gifting occasions are going to become even more important in 2023. So I saw a stat that said that Valentine's Day was scheduled to be, that spend on that was going to be up on the year. And so actually, and also on all festive spending for next year as well, is forecast to be up. Again, because when people's discretionary spending is down, what you tend to see is they buy less sort of self-gifting, but they will still prioritise the gifting their loved ones. Hyperlocal. This is something that's come out of supply chain disruption, and also this continuing to growing trend for people wanting to support small and independent local businesses. So the Retail Gazette, their trend webinar had it as 92% of the people they surveyed felt that it was important to support small and local. So again, this goes back to, if for your business, making sure that you're really talking about and championing the fact that you're a small independent business. And then life stages and events, again, going back to this idea that if overall discretionary spending is down, then the life stages and events are things like, so life stages could be, for example, menopause. There's a lot of sort of trending items about dealing with the menopause, understanding the menopause, but then also events, this growing desire to mark important events. And then my favourite stat was that pet birthdays, apparently the spend on pet birthdays is set to increase from £45 in 2022 to £71.62 in 2023. And also back to school is set to increase as well, from 171 to 221 in 2023. So really what it comes down to is that less discretionary spending overall, but more emphasis on special items to be given to people for special occasions. Okay. In conclusion then, I said there's a lot to fit in. What does 2023 mean? So I think the thing I'd like you to take away from all of this, if possible, is that it is going to be a challenging year, and for sure discretionary spending will be down. It is a continuation of the headwinds that we've been struggling against in 2022. I do think it's important to prepare to meet your customer where they are. So just be really super mindful of the fact that they are their spending is under pressure. So what can they, what can you do to really acknowledge that, to really talk to them in the language that they understand? Again, I often say this, but it's not that far of a stretch to figure out what they're thinking about, because I'm sure it'll be the same things you're thinking about. So you don't have to go on and on and on about, oh, I know everyone's really struggling right now. But just a small amount of empathy and a small amount of tweaking your messaging to really talk about the value that you provide can go a long, long way. So make sure that you are meeting your customer where they are and in the mindset that they're in. Diversifying your income streams. I do think, as I said, there's lots there about e-commerce, lots of the ways it's shifting. But I think in general, I have to say, if I look back to 2019 even, if I look at the clients I've worked with over the last 4 or 5 years, the ones that have been able to weather the storm most effectively, and it's been a storm, have been the ones with a diversified income streams. And I do think that if you have been predominantly e-commerce based with very little of additional activity, then this would be the year I would think about how you can expand that, and also get in front of new customers and have new experiences and just try something new in your business. I think it's also really important to remember that, yes, the customer is price conscious, but they want independent, local, ethical businesses. They want to buy nice things. And again, I would really focus in on your occasions, your gifting occasions in the spring. So that's Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Father's Day, Easter, if applicable to your business. Really think about the reasons that people have to buy. I mean, it's always important, but it's even more important now. And keep sharing your stories about what makes you special and why shopping with you is a great thing to do. So just before I come on to questions, I just want to remind you that if you want more support in your business and you're not already a member of the Resilient Retail Club, this is just to say you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Instagram. Also a shout out to the podcast, The Resilient Retail Game Plan. If you don't already listen, do tune in. I was very excited to find out that I'm in the top 10% most followed podcasts on Spotify, which is a fact I intend to drop into as many conversations as possible. So there's over nearly 130 episodes of the Resilient Retail Game Plan. So if you just want some good practical advice about running a product business, a bit of motivation, inspiration, definitely go check it out. The Resilient Retail Club, you come along, join, go to resilientretailclub.com. You can find out more about the membership. You can also find out more about working with me one-to-one in 2023 if you want one-to-one support. And also coming up, I have my Plan Your 2023 free challenge. Can't believe I've got that typo on that last slide. And And I run them every January. They are a lot of fun. This is my 4th year running it. It's really good fun. There's usually at least a couple of hundred other product businesses in there. I think last year we had over 500. And it's five tasks over 5 days. It's a great start to 2023. We have Ask Me Anything every night, and it's a great way to kick off the year. You can go to this website, tinyurl.com/sales2023 to sign up. And now I would love to take any questions if you've got any. Oh, thank you. Very informative. Happy Christmas. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would. Okay, interesting. We've got a conversation here going on about Twitter. Very different people on Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, I wouldn't invest any time on Twitter if you don't use it currently. Yes, I agree. I think, as I said, there are for sure people. Helen was saying that she sells on Twitter. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that this year was just a really good example of how somebody messed with a major platform, and it's a good reminder that the platforms are amazing. They're amazing resources, but they are not something that we own. Not clear how long it will be around. Yeah. Yeah, Susie says I wouldn't prioritize it. No, I completely. Yes. Okay. So, as I said, do just give me a shout if we get out. If here today and you're like, you know what, actually, I meant to ask a question and I didn't, then just feel free to pop over to Instagram and send me a DM. The same goes. Oh, okay. I'm going to stop sharing. The same goes if you are watching this on the replay and you have a question. And as I said, I think in general, how do I feel about 2023? I feel like it will be a challenging year. I do think that we are going to be required to be on top of our game. I think we should all be looking at ways of minimizing the risk in our business. So whether that's reducing our stock levels if we can, so that we've got a bit more wiggle room. Another point I wanted to make, so it's not all doom and gloom. As I said, 92% of people feel that it's important to support independent businesses, and actually the Shopify stats show that 19% more was spent with independent businesses year on year on Black Friday on the Shopify sites compared to the year before. So that is a clear indication that more people are shopping small, shopping independent. So we definitely have that going for us. Even if the overall spend is down, I think we'll see more money being spent with small and independent businesses. But I think we just all have to know our numbers, be really clear about our businesses, be really clear about the goals that we want to set, understand that the game has changed, that it's really about building those authentic relationships with people, that I say the game has changed. It's interesting. I was thinking about this because the tactics have changed for sure. I think the way that people market their businesses is changing, but the very fundamental principles of creating great products that people love and want to buy has not changed in, ever really. I mean, that's the basis of commerce from the dawn of time. So I think that it's worth remembering that the fundamental principles have not shifted, even if the tactics have. Is it okay to launch new products now, or is it best to wait after Christmas and New Year if people have done their Christmas shopping? I think you could launch them. I don't know how much traction you're going to get at this point. I think people are very, very focused on Christmas right now. They are focused on their food shopping, they're focused on their Christmas table, they're focused on last minute gifting. You could have them up on your website ready to go, but a soft launch, in other words, and then really push it post-Christmas. They'd be ready to go for the post-Christmas push. I mean, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with launching them. I just don't think many people have got much headspace to think about anything else this week other than traveling to see loved ones, last-minute gift buying, last-minute food prep, that kind of stuff. So it may just be that you don't see much of a reaction. A lot of retailers have a very clear switch after Christmas that they do bring newness in. It's one of the first things they do is like clear out the Christmas or put it all into the sale, whatever else they're doing with it, and then bring in the newness. So it is, I would say, post-Christmas is a more typical time to launch new things. But yeah, I mean, if you really feel the burning need to, you could try it, but I just wouldn't be too surprised if you don't see much of a reaction. All right. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Really great to have you all with me. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, or at least a wonderful break, and a wonderful festive period, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is you're celebrating. And I will be back in the new year. But as I said, if you feel the need to get more retail advice over the break, then definitely tune into the podcast. And the Resilient Retail Game Plan, it's called. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, whatever you like. Yeah, here's to a great 2023. Bye.